We're starting over. There we go. Mic is on. We're live. Good evening. My name is James K. Holder II. Some of you may know me as Sir James II. I'd like to welcome you back to Not on My Watch. If you are watching, it is because you are a dedicated viewer of the series, or maybe it's your first time watching. So I'd like to thank you for joining me. I do want to quickly share this cast to my Twitter feed. I'd like to ask you all to do the same as well. And as always, I'd like to ask you to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this. Please subscribe to this channel, and that's the best way to get the notifications that we are actually going live. And then I'd like to ask you to retweet this and repeat this. So without further ado, if you're watching, today is Wednesday, August 23rd, 2017, and Trump is still out of his damn mind. I know many of you probably watched what was going on in Nevada or Arizona rather, yesterday. I'm not one of the people that watched. I'd like to invite you to join me every Wednesday at 7 p.m. where, of course, as we are live, there may be some issues or malfunctions. I'm testing out a new format that allows me to tape live and also include titles, but sometimes my attention may be split, and so as of now, I did just discover a mic issue. Thank you to one of my supporters for texting me and letting me know that they weren't getting the audio, but I will briefly run back through the data that we discussed before. Now, what's important to understand is that right now I just really want to focus on moving forward for 2018 with Bernie Sanders as a part of that challenge. We discussed tweets from Brian Schaffner, that is @B_B Schaffner, @B_Schaffner, nationally. Among those we can validate as voting in a presidential primary and general election, 12% of Bernie voters voted for Donald Trump. Again, this should be a number that is alarming to many of you. It doesn't particularly alarm me because the writing was on the wall. During the election, there was just a lot of discussion about the need for Bernie Sanders to sort of distance himself from Hillary Clinton, even though he was essentially claiming to be the only person who could deliver the voters to from Trump, that he polled highest against Donald Trump, that his message and his policies were the only ones that could fix it. And so, let me see, I'm getting another text. Oh goodness, today is the day. We're only 18 minutes in. Okay, and so we're dealing with a very difficult situation because Donald Trump is a dangerous human being. He is the biggest threat to our democracy. He is the biggest threat to our sovereignty, our safety. We have witnessed a complete series of meltdowns over the last several months, but just specifically within the last week. I mean, this Arizona rally was just nonsense. And so we're talking about someone who effectively has come to the state of Arizona, has refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing or saying against John McCain. His followers and supporters are now saying that John McCain should be dead. And maybe I said some harsh things about John McCain. I don't remember wishing him dead, though. I just wished he would maybe resign before he voted to repeal Obamacare. And he didn't, so now I like John McCain temporarily. And you really have a challenge where the man is completely devoid of fact. Nothing this man says is true. Nothing he says can be held to a standard or a true account. We cannot count on Donald Trump for anything other than lies at this point. And we owe his election in part to Bernie Sanders. And I'm sorry, but this is just where we are. The numbers are coming in. And now we see that a significant portion of Bernie Sanders supporters actually voted directly for Donald Trump in the general election. And so I want to go through those numbers briefly. One thing I will say, though, a part of the danger of Donald Trump is that he is just hell-bent on just telling vicious lies. And I'm going to actually tweet out that this audio is corrected now. vicious lies. I mean, one of the biggest lies he told recently was that his rally had 15,000 attendees, but the venue itself could only seat 5,000 people, and even within that, the venue wasn't full. You had tons of people sending out pictures that showed that the venue was like half empty, not even half full. It just was really sort of a disgraceful display. And so what we have to do is try to hold this man to account for something, because it's not really working out in any way that we're trying as of now. So we discussed briefly this tweet that I read by Brian Schaffner. I asked that you follow him. This is at @B_Schaffner, which is spelled SCHAFFNER, and that's on Twitter. And let's just look at the numbers again. We're talking about what Sanders voters did in the general election. And of course, there was a significant portion who did ultimately vote for Hillary Clinton, almost 80%. But separate from that, nearly over 12% of Bernie Sanders supporters nationally voted directly for Donald Trump. And then you spew that over into looking at other candidates like Jill Stein and Harambe, and then people who just sat out altogether. There was really a display and a disdain that we received from Bernie Sanders supporters when it came to turning around in the general and doing the right thing. So let's take this back. Okay. We're looking now at another set of data. I'm still here. And you take this number, Brian Schaffner, what he was able to do was take data from that he was able to validate separately and pulled out that approximately in Wisconsin, you saw that 9% of Sanders voters voted directly for Donald Trump, and that in Michigan, 8% of Sanders voters voted directly for Donald Trump. Then we see in Pennsylvania another 16% of Sanders voters voted directly for Donald Trump. So separate from this national 12%, you're talking about in the states that really mattered, like Pennsylvania, it spiked all the way up to 16%. And why is that? You can't say it's because Hillary Clinton didn't campaign in Pennsylvania. She was there all the time. And, you know, what this other gentleman, G. Elliott Morris, has done is taken it a little step farther. And he's taken the numbers from the percentages of the voters and looked directly at what those numbers are and compared them to Trump's winning margins in those states. So we're talking about in Wisconsin, there was a margin of 51,000 voters. And Trump won that state by 22,000. Specifically in Wisconsin is disheartening because there was already a voter suppression issue where over 200,000 of the voters were completely disenfranchised by crosscheck. They were just thrown out. And so we're talking about a complex set of circumstances that led to the derailing of our democracy, where we know fully well that Hillary Clinton got the most votes. She was the people's president, the choice. And yet, between factors of the far left and the far right, we see that we were left and dealt this hand of dealing with Donald Trump that we're stuck with at least until the system that we're in finds a way, you know, the system that wrongly appointed him to that post finds a way to get him out. And so that's really where we are. You're talking about Michigan. 47,000 voters. That's nearly 5 times as many voters that Clinton needed to win the state of Michigan. Went, instead of going from Bernie Sanders, went directly to Donald Trump. Pennsylvania, 116,000, almost 3 times as many votes went that were needed, you know, to win that state. That's how many people who originally voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary and turned and voted for Donald Trump. So we must hold Bernie Sanders accountable for these numbers. And I'm not sure if that screen is still up. Let me take that off. Now that is just a terrible set of numbers for us. And my thing is, we've seen over the course of the year, that there's been all this blame placed on the Democratic establishment and the Democratic Party and all these other boogeymen. But at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders had a responsibility to help move these voters over. The Democratic Party's primary platform shifted so significantly towards Sanders' platform, I'm finding it hard to understand why there's such a significant shift in the number of people who originally voted for Bernie Sanders and now voted for Donald Trump. And that's not even to discuss, again, the significant portions of people who voted either third party or stayed home. Why is it that Bernie Sanders, who claims that he was the only one who could have won in the general election, despite the fact that he lost the primary by 4 million votes, why is it that he wasn't able to deliver the numbers of his own voters? You had people out on the trail, Nina Turner, Killer Mike, you had Rosario Dawson, you had Sean King, you had all these, Susan Sarandon, you had all these people who were emboldened and given a platform by Bernie Sanders. He gave them the green light. And these people went out and specifically told people to either stay home or to vote third party, or that their votes ultimately didn't matter. Mark Lamont Hill. You had all these people who went in from the Bernie Sanders camp directly to third party, Jill Stein. And look at Jill Stein now. I mean, she's bonkers. The woman, I mean, it really is sad to see where the Our Revolution movement has gone, even up to now, where you see people with donuts and water in their Twitter handles making fun of Nina Turner's absurd accusations against the Democratic Party. This is not a group of people who is working to strengthen our party. This is not a group of people who's working to weaken Donald Trump. This is not a group of people that we can count on moving forward to resist the Trump movement, the Trump onslaught, what's creating problems for everyday American citizens, and that's pushing us farther away from the goals that we've set for our country and for our people to be able to access. We really have to be honest about what we're expecting from people that we align with politically. That includes Bernie Sanders. I mean, if he's saying he's a member of the party, then he's not a member of the party. You got Our Revolution. Our Revolution's working actively to raise funds, but a lot of the funds that they do is to primary existing Democrats who don't meet their standards. And then ironically, you have people who Bernie Sanders supports in a primary or in special elections that are not pro-life. You have people who are significantly against basic tenets of the Democratic Party, basic aspects of what we believe in as a party that this group will uphold but won't stand for what we all say we value. Now, you can't say it's because of free college. You can't say it's because of minimum wage. You can't say it's because of all these things, because those are all things that were adopted in the platform. We tried to expand Obamacare until a point it was universal. I mean, that was the approach that we set out, but that wasn't good enough. And so now you've got people who are picking a fight and working actively against us because of single payer. They say it's because of single payer. They say it's because of corporate ties. But at some point, the choice was between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And you had Bernie Sanders voters who in large part chose Donald Trump. They did it in part because Bernie Sanders was not an effective surrogate. In many ways, I think he encouraged people to be apathetic towards the political process once there was nothing in it for him, other than continuing to raise funds. And then you had a situation where there was this Russian influence in our election, and it specifically targeted the younger, more naive voters in the Bernie Sanders camp who weren't able to really understand the dangers of things like the messages that were coming out that should have been avoided, and knowing from previous elections like 2000 that this is exactly what could lead us into having another Republican in office. And so my thing is, we have to really set a strong agenda moving forward, and that starts with understanding the numbers. We need to hold the party to account for what they're putting out there, because at the end of the day, Sanders can't talk about his intent. Sanders can't talk about what would have happened, what could have happened. All we know is what actually happened based on your actions. And if you were a surrogate for Hillary Clinton in Wisconsin and those numbers came out from your own voters, you have to ask yourself why. What is it that was out there that you helped put out there now that led to that? And does that make you a reliable ally? In my view, it doesn't. We need to call for an end of the lies. As soon as it came down to the election results, and of course, many Hillary voters were pissed off. Hillary primary voters were pissed off because it's like, well, the Bernie Sanders voters all spent so much time bashing her and dragging the numbers down that it ultimately did demoralize the vote and suppress the vote in a significant way, to the point where, piggybacking onto the Comey letter and additional Russian collusion and influence in the election, ultimately made for the result that we were left with. And we should have had enough of a margin set up in place to prevent that from happening. And it just didn't work out that way. And so my problem is that we've got to call for an end of the lies, which means when we're discussing what happened in 2016, all parties need to be honest about what happened. We need to be able to rely on people who claim that they are progressive voters and they want to elect someone other than Donald Trump to admit that many of you voted for Donald Trump outright. Because I'll tell you, I don't do Trump supporters. I don't deal with Trump voters. I don't care if it's in spite. And I had conversations with many pissed off Bernie voters as they were losing their state primaries that were saying they were just going to vote for Donald Trump just for spite. And that's where it landed us, because you had an immature group of naive voters who were not educated. They were not aware of the issues and they were not aware of the risk. And much of the reason why they were not aware of the risk is because they didn't care. They were privileged enough to where they didn't have to deal with the consequences of a Donald Trump presidency. Unfortunately, I'm talking about you, white males, the progressive white males who spent so many months lecturing us on what was better for us, what was better for the party, what was wrong with Hillary Clinton, and all these other issues that ultimately should have been left to the side. We should have been able to unite around this candidate and the platform. And that just simply didn't happen. And it's not because of Hillary supporters. It's because of Bernie Sanders supporters. So we need to hold them to account. We have to address these numbers and really say plainly, are you a libertarian? Are you a Green Party person? Are you a Republican? If so, Michael Moore, if so, Mark Lamont Hill, if so, Bernie Sanders, then the mainstream media needs to stop addressing you as though you're members of the Democratic Party because you're black, or because you believe in universal health care, or because you believe in all these other issues that seem to align enough with the Democratic Party that would make you an ally of ours, but you're actively working against us by voting for someone other than Democrats. We have to hold the media to account for this as well, because they continually frame people who look like me as automatic Democrats, or automatic people who would vote for Clinton, but then use specifically our hues to put out Katrina Pearson and what's the guy's name? Paris Denard. All these people who are black, and even, sorry, Anna Navarro, I love you like a play cousin, but at the end of the day, you have to own up to the fact that you're a member of the GOP. And as a woman of color, you would not be given the microphone that you're given if you were a Democrat. They wouldn't care what you thought. So it's a double-edged sword. It's like, yes, you have a platform, you have a stage to criticize Trump, but how many years were you complicit in GOP racism and misogyny and sexism and homophobia as a member of that party that you were okay with, that you let come to a head? And now we're dealing with this blow up of where we find ourselves stuck in Trumplandia, and now everybody wants to be against it. Joe Scarborough. Y'all all added to this. And so it doesn't really work to then say, oh, well, I've been against it all along. No, own your role. Own the role that you played in bringing us to where we are now. So I want, before we continue in doing rallies and Bernie Sanders continually speaking as a Democrat on shows like Chris Hayes, all in with Chris Hayes, you know Bernie Sanders ain't no Democrat, so stop having him on there as if he speaks for our party. He needs to take ownership of those votes. That's one. And then we can move forward to 2018, which is right around the corner. We have to be honest about who we can count on moving forward, and that's all I'm saying. I understand people change their minds. I understand there were hurt feelings. 2016 is over. And I'm I, for one, want to move away from framing things within the context of Trump and Hillary and Bernie Sanders. So I'm going to take this off now. But I will say that we have to be really mindful of the fact that we don't get too many chances to fix this stuff. And so if we're aligning with someone who actively works against our party's interests, we have to hold ourselves accountable for the results that we face because of that. Because we all need to take ownership of what ended resulting in the 2016 election. I think we have to stop framing things around Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, because those two are not going to help us stop Donald Trump at this point. And we really have to just focus on 2018, flipping the House as best as possible. Now knowing maybe we're not counting on Bernie Sanders voters because they, like we've said all along, they fall into a category of privileged individuals who wouldn't lose enough in a Trump presidency, and therefore it's not worth it to keep bending to them on our policy issues because they don't really care about the policy when it comes down to it. They won't make an 80% compromise because they could lose all the 80% or all the 100% and still be fine. It really is quite remarkable, and that's a discussion we need to continue to have and be honest about. Moving forward, I do want to discuss the counter. I want to thank everybody who tuned in for the show. Now, the counter, as many of you may know, is the second web series that I've been working on basically for the last couple of months. It is a cooking series that tries to bring highlight to America's food insecurity issues. Now, this might be issues dealing with not so much poverty, but yes, poverty, issues dealing with living in a food desert, issues dealing with having a disability or an illness and not having access to healthy, affordable meals, issues dealing with health associated with not having access to anything other than processed and fast foods and deep fried foods in your community. And so the first episode, basically, I make a salad niçoise, tuna salad niçoise, and that's one of my favorite things to make. So I just kind of and I invited my friends over who had earlier that day volunteered delivering meals with a group. Actually, I can tell you the name of the group now. It was Open Hand, is an organization, fabulous organization in Atlanta that for many years has delivered meals specifically to the sick, the disabled, the immobile, the elderly oftentimes, basically shut-ins within Atlanta, and they provide medically appropriate meals for these people and deliver them so that people have enough food to eat. And they actually operate within 19 counties in the state of Georgia. So it's not just an Atlanta thing, but it is a huge deal. So I invite you to look into that. But I want you to take a look at this preview from that episode, and hopefully the audio will work on this. This is my first time doing a video input of this show. Enjoy. In another place and time, I would have probably sat this in the refrigerator to kind of just dry out a little bit. I'm just going to shake this. You see there's a little bit of water, and I don't have on tennis shoes. So if I slip and fall, it is what it is. I'm just going to keep going.
As you sip your wine.
As I sip my wine, which will not make it better. Clearly, we've done this before. So now I'm ready to start assembling our plates, and I know I have kept you all of it. So I will do my best. The most important thing that we had here was our tuna. That is the star of the show. So we are going to just slice this, clean knife, and start out cutting it there. Nice, beautiful, pink ahi tuna. And you definitely, if you go through the care of finding a fresh, in another place and time, I would have probably sat. So I hope you enjoyed that preview. Pink ahi tuna. And I just kind of want to end by asking you to continue to support that show. That has been just sort of a big work of mine for a while, and I'm super excited about it. And as always, I'd like to end this cast by thanking our friends to the show. This includes new producer-level sponsors to to the Counter TV. So if you'd like to become, excuse me, let me put this number up. See, I'm still working on these titles. If you'd like to become a friend of the show, you can do so by making a donation of $1 or more to www.paypal.me/JKH2. If you'd like to become a producer level sponsor of The Counter, which is that cooking show you just saw a preview of that just debuted, then you can do so by making a $100 contribution to the website above. And then I'll, of course, recognize you within the credits of the show and also give you a shout out here. So without further ado, I want to thank Chicagoland Breaks. I want to thank Elizabeth W., Aaron S. I want to thank my friend Cheryl. I want to thank Susan L., Coretta A., Douglas A., Douglas A., Southern Fried Marketing, great name for a company. I want to thank Angela W. I want to thank Mitzi L., Alan H., Jill L., Elizabeth S., a lot of Elizabeths today, another Elizabeth R., Susanna W., Kathleen C., Jennifer M., Heather I., and Mary Ann N. And also I'd like to thank the wonderful people, Chris and Nora at Strong Tree Coffee. You made my day. Of course, you sent me 3 beautiful bags of coffee. And it's not about like promoting your brand, but like I was reluctant to even drink the coffee because the bags were so pretty. And I finally drank some today, and it is really, really, really good. So I am very appreciative of that. I want to just thank everyone out there. Lee W., I don't want to say your last name, but thank you for solving our overhead camera issue by sending your extra GoPro for us to use on The Counter. I just want to thank everyone who has made that show a possibility and continues to support us here at Not On My Watch, and also dealing with our sort of issues as we go along. As you know, today we had a little mic issue earlier, but hoping to hammer all that stuff out as we move along. So I want to thank you for tuning in. As always, I'd like to ask you to return here every Wednesday at 7 p.m. to watch Not On My Watch Live. And lastly, I'd like to ask you to relax, relate, and resist. Thank you.